Welcome to Travel Stories by WITY Travels. Hello to everyone listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We are your hosts. I'm Will.
And I'm Kati.
In today's episode, we're going to tell you about our experience and our time in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all in 2021. We visited Mostar, Blagaj, as well as Sarajevo. In the description, we'll have the timestamp, so if you just want to go to a particular moment or a particular city, and we'll also have the links because we did video on all of this. So if you want to actually see what this looks like with your own eyes, we'll give you the links to go to YouTube and check those videos out as well. But we start off by getting into Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is always a different experience every single time. It's good if you can go off of your memory on what actually happened the last time, but every experience and every border crossing is a brand new bag. So here we had a couple of options. Now we're in Partisan Montenegro, the country, well, the city in the country, right below where we're going in next, right? Bosnia and Herzegovina. And there was a couple of options. And it wasn't like you can just show up and you just get on a bus, because it was like every other day or just a couple of times a week, they had options to go to two of the major cities. And I thought maybe we go to Sarajevo first. But when we went to the bus stop to see the options, basically you can go Friday in the middle of the night.
Not a good option.
And they drop you off not even at a bus stop. So basically, you'd leave at 8 o'clock at night from Podgorica. You'd get there, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, in the middle of the night. And on top of that, you're not at a bus stop, so Lord knows where they would actually drop you off. Okay, that's not the best plan. And then there's also an option to go to Mostar, which is another major city that we wanted to see as well, a little bit west of Sarajevo. And that was a little bit better because the bus would leave at 8 o'clock. We never know how long these things are going to take.
8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning instead of 8 o'clock at night, so yeah. That's much better. And because you can look at Google Maps and you can say, hey, this is going to be like 5 or 6 hours, but you probably add an hour or 2 hours because between the border crossing and between the fact that they never take the quickest way possible. Mm-hmm. So they could easily go from Podgorica up to I think Nikšić or something like that, the next major city, and then up to the border. But instead, they decide to go like completely west to the water and then work their way up. So it's a lot more because they have to go and pick up other people. I don't know how it is in normal times, like how it would be in 2019, but at least today, they need to make sure it's worth their time. So there's less routes to get from city to city, country to country, and they have to make sure they stop at each bus stop to make sure that they're picking up as many people as possible, getting as many people as they possibly can onto the bus before making these big trips.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the route that we did take was it was along the coast, and so it was early. Actually, no, we didn't leave at 8 a.m. We left at 6 a.m. Remember? Because we saw the sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so as we were going along the roads along the water, because it was the weather and early in the morning, there was like fog everywhere. We were high up in the mountains, and you could just see this overlaying fog across the whole city of Couture, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it looked really cool. And also, the other thing we didn't mention, it was a tiny little minivan. Until we got to Couture, and then they switched us into a little bit of a bigger bus. Remember that?
Yeah. So when we got there, we made the journey to the station, and on the way there, we were followed by one of the many stray dogs we've run into, in our entire trip to the Balkans. And they have the little tags on their ears, so I'm sure that they're vaccinated. And if they were to like bite you, you probably wouldn't get any sort of like disease or anything like that. But still, they get really, really close. What was the city that... I don't remember the city that we're in.
We were in, with the Rosava Castle, Shkodra.
Yeah, so we're in Shkodra, and as we're walking, like, this dog, like, brushed up against me, to the point where I really thought someone was trying to, like, pickpocket me. Now, I'm pretty good with making sure you can't easily pickpocket me. I'm not going to tell you all the ways how, but I try to keep pretty safe where, you can't easily just come up and easily rob me. So I was like, why the heck is someone getting up next to me like this close? And then I look down and it's this dog, and I can't lose him for any sort of distance. You try to speed walk no matter what I do.
And he like jumped up and tried to play with you too, I think, because you had taken your beanie off.
Yeah, so I took off my beanie, and I guess he thought it was either food or like I'm throwing a ball or a frisbee or something. So it's not like they're mean, aggressive dogs. It's just they're so loving, and they're probably just trying to be friendly to everyone to get a new home. And that's great, but we obviously can't pack much in our backpacks. Nonetheless, a new animal or a new pet. So this dog in the morning was doing the same thing as we're walking to the bus stop. Probably about halfway there, he saw us. He think he was hanging out at a gas station and followed us all the way there. And it's not like he stopped following us when we got to the bus stop. He followed us all the way in because there was just like these grocery store, like electronic sliding doors. So he came right into the lobby. As we put our stuff down, he sat or laid down right next to us.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not getting rid of this dog anytime soon. So there's eventually, when we're going out to the van/bus area, there were some better dividers with like some turnstile kind of thing. So the dog couldn't follow us there. But for the most of the time, the dog was hanging out with us. And then, yes, we go up and they told us what terminal it was. We really never know what's going on. We try to at least learn the basics of the language, but there's no way, in a week per city or 2 weeks per country that I can learn enough to say, is this the proper bus? So I basically show them the ticket and say, Mostar? And it's like, yeah, Mostar. And then we get in. And then once the bus is basically loaded, the little van is loaded up, besides maybe one extra seat, then like a group of what was there, 4 guys?
I think 3 guys, yeah.
3 or 4 guys. And I'm like, they're not going to fit in there. So they definitely oversold the bus that we could have. So then our van driver goes to the bus and he starts talking with them, and I guess those guys go on to that bigger bus. So we didn't know at that moment, which we never really know unless like hours later we can kind of put 2 and 2 together, get some context clues. But usually things happen and we're just like, I have no idea what's going on.
Let's
so
go with it.
At that moment, we weren't sure if they weren't really going to Mostar, they're going somewhere else, and like that was a bus for them. But yes, as we went along this long scenic route to the water, when we got to, I think, Budva is how you say it, that is where we noticed that this other bus had those guys on it, and basically was following us, or we were following them. So we got off the smaller minivan and got into the larger bus with those guys, as they had room when they dropped off some people at that bus stop. But you never know. You're not going to go the quickest route, the shortest route, and you don't know when you're going to have to get off of one van and go onto another van or into a bus. So it's always interesting. But
so we've learned to pack our snacks.
Right, and it's like you don't know when you're going to stop for lunch, or if it's even going to be food you want to eat or you could eat. So we always pack sandwiches and chips and other like Nutri-Grain bars and things like that, so we don't completely starve on this route. And because we don't know if it's going to be like 5 hours, 10 hours, you never know. So that's always interesting. But eventually we did make it to Mostar, which was our first destination.
Well, hold on. You got to talk about this crossing the border deal. All our crossing the border deals are pretty exciting these days. So we get to the border of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Yeah, so we get to the border here. I remember there being 3 border stops. So the first one, not a big deal. Basically, the bus driver will write all of your names down on a piece of paper, and they'll turn it into the first border crossing. Then here we had 3 on this one at least. Then we get to the second one, and we get all off of it. We hand our passports and our information, documentation, no problem, and then we get back on. And then it was the third one where we had some issues. So we all went through no problem.
We didn't have issues.
We didn't have issues. But then some other people on our bus, which is probably these other guys.
I think they were the guys in the original city that
Right. So back to the part of we don't know what is going on. We have no context. Even with other people speaking the same language, joking around like, hey, this definitely explaining in their native tongue what was going on, but we couldn't understand any of that. So we think some of the issue was maybe like their passports. Like they might have been, they definitely had different passports than us. I think they're like, maybe they're from Turkey or something like that, where there was more issues. Maybe they didn't have all the right documentation that they needed. But yeah, they weren't going through. So they all went to like the border crossing guard agency, right?
Yeah.
So they're basically
Really?
taken in the bag to detention to talk to them. So we don't know what they did not have or if it was an issue with their passport. But we were sitting there for how long? What, like 30 extra minutes?
I would say it was close to 45 minutes. Because that whole border crossing experience, I think, ended up taking like an hour and a half. I was like, oh wow, this is really fast. We all got through, but then that's what held us up. It was like about 45 minutes, maybe even more. I can't recall. So like we were, the bus driver was trying to wait for them, making, in case they were able to get through. But I guess it gets to a point where it's like, sorry guys, we gotta go. You gotta figure this out on your own.
Yeah, at some point you gotta call it.
Yeah.
And I think one guy did come out eventually. One guy eventually came out, and we thought everything was gonna be fine with him, and then he goes to the bushes to go to the bathroom, and the border guard is like watching him closely. Doesn't take kind to that, and then he calls him back.
Yeah.
And then eventually, and then this other guy who was like hanging out with the bus driver, like up front, talking with him, laughing with him the whole way, distracting him, which is not great, but that's okay. And he, I think, went as like a translator because maybe he knew both languages. Yeah. And but eventually, I think all of those guys had to go back, and
they grabbed their bags, and
they sent for their bags, and then they had to be detained there. But the funny thing was, the grandma on this trip, she was not having it. She was not waiting around all this extra time. I know we paid the money for the buses to take us from point A to point B, but as cars were coming up, we saw that she was talking to them. Like they're at the border crossing, giving their passports and their documentation, and this lady's like talking to cars. Like, what the heck is she doing? And eventually, she has flagged down a taxi that has dropped off people from the Bosnia and Herzegovina side, and she's got her taxi. She's told the bus driver or the van driver to give her things, and she is in the taxi on her way. So yeah, basically by the time we would have got there, probably by the time we loaded up, she was already in her next location. So she's got that experience to know that wisdom to know this is not going to be pretty.
Yeah, maybe by the time we're her age, we'll gain that wisdom too.
Yeah, like we're trying to save money, but she's like, I don't know how much time I have. I got to get to the next location as quickly as possible. So that was our border crossing experience, and then we finally made it to Mostar. Now, one of the most famous landmarks there is the Sniper Tower, and this was an old bank, a glass covered bank that was either open or set to be open, like right before the Bosnian Wars started in the 90s. And during this time, one side was able to use this building as a sniper building to see people all around town, and kind of kill them from like a long range. So it's a very moving thing, especially if you're walking around town. And we were on the other side of the river that basically separates the two areas of the city. And as we would look up from several different places, we could look up and we could see that tower. So I mean, it would be like frightening if you're just going to your neighbor's house or going for some errands or even just some fresh air, how many times you'd be kind of vulnerable and exposed to that. But some folks, we don't recommend this, and we didn't do this, go into the Sniper Tower. Now, it's not a matter of, hey, it's a museum that you can pay to get into. You can't go to the front door and just go easily in. But there are some like rocks in the back, and it's a little bit shorter for like people to like jump over and then kind of explore it. We did think about it for a second, But the day that we went to go do it was a Monday, and not just any Monday. It was like Independence Day of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So everyone's off of school, everyone's off of work. The park nearby was busy, and like even the restaurant across, like everyone was out and about, and not a good day to try to get in trouble for something like that.
Yeah, it was funny because that was the first day we were kind of like exploring the area. And we're like, wow, this town is really lively on a Monday. Like, what's going on? And then I think we had stopped in to get coffee that morning somewhere, and the guy was telling us, oh, well, today is, like a National Independence Day. So that's why there's a bunch of people out. And we're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. But yeah, like you said, the Sniper Tower was right across from the park. The park with the Bruce Lee statue. We're like, yeah, it's definitely not a wise choice to try and climb into this tower on that day in the sight of everybody. But we decided to just keep venturing off into the park.
But when you were thinking about it, you're like, well, maybe if they have like a car or a van that they can get on top of and get over that. But our legs are getting very strong. But even if we were to attempt something like that, like our upper body strength is not good enough, because you basically have to go up to the wall, put your hands over, like push up completely, and then like kick a leg over. It's like even with like the rocks that are there, it's not super easy to get into this building.
And you might be able to because you're tall, but I'm not so tall like you.
So right. So yeah, Kati would have been really struggling, and it's like it's not worth it. They say there's a really good view up there, and inside there's like a bunch of graffiti that you can even see, but you can see the artwork from the outside. There's even like this one saying like, we're all looking up at the same sky. So there's these you get to see the artwork of the people trying to make the most of this, because the Bosnian War was back in the 90s, and you would think a building like this would be like demolished, but it's still up. People have used it to do graffiti over, and some paintings. You can see the bullet holes still on the side of the building and on the streets, and on even the buildings very, very close to it. So it's a good historical piece. But as far as actually getting into it, they don't want you to go into it, and it's not super easy to get into it either.
Yeah, and what's crazy is as we're, venturing into these cities and this part of the world where, they just had these wars back in the early 90s. Like, that, I think for me, like, kind of, I don't know, like it tripped me up because, we're learning history in school. You're talking about these wars that were long ago, not in your lifetime. And even then, I'm like, wow, even like World War I and World War II were not that long ago. But then to have, evidence of like a war that was literally in the past, 30 years, I'm like, that's insane. Like, I'm 30, so I would have been 2 at the time. And just to think through and try and put myself in these shoes, like living in an area where there was a war going on like that, like that's just insane.
Yeah, not just going through the war at the time, but still living in that place. Like to not like escape or try to go away and pretend like it never happened. Like these folks, majority of them, right? Anyone our age or older lived through this, right? If they were fortunate enough to live through it, and it's pretty intense. I mean, there's a lot of really great things about this city. For sure, but then there's a lot of like pain and tragedy that you would think they would just like demolish these buildings, but no, they wanted to serve as a reminder that we as a people are going in the right direction, and these terrible things did happen in the past, but we're moving, and we're not gonna do these kind of things ever again. So that's probably why they keep it up, and probably just try to decide what to do with that space.
Yeah, for sure. But we just kept, venturing off on this beautiful Monday. The weather was great, and we walked through that park, checked out that Bruce Lee statue.
Yeah, so we went to the Bruce Lee statue, which is interesting because that obviously having a war and all these different people and groups still living there, they couldn't agree on much, but there was like a committee that said that, hey, we should have some sort of statue to represent our unity. And the one thing that they could agree on was Bruce Lee. So that's interesting that that's there, and there is a reason there. And it's right by like a playground too.
Yeah, so it was a beautiful playground, weather was great, and like we said, I guess school was off, so there was a bunch of kids playing around, and I don't know, like if we just give off this vibe of just, obviously we're not locals, but just to pinpoint that we're American. I'm like, I don't know if you can tell that. I mean, you know, we look very we don't
look British or something, so it doesn't look like we're from the UK.
Right.
But I don't know if it's just the way we carry ourselves or our sweaters or whatever. But most people know like we speak English.
Yeah, like I think that first morning when we walked out, somebody from across the street hollered, "Good morning!" Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's one thing to say good morning in its own language and being friendly, but to know that no, they're not from here.
like you guys really, really stick out, and I'm gonna say hi to you. Like they're friendly, so
yeah.
I guess they're happy to have people from another country. But yeah, I guess we can't hide it.
I don't know, but there's this kid in the park, super adorable, maybe like 10, 11. He runs up and he's like, while we're trying to record the Bruce Lee statue, mind you, he's like, "Do you know what time it is?" We're like, yeah, well, it's not like we told him the time, but I don't know. It was adorable, but it was also just really weird. And I love children. I used to work with children, and so anyways, it was just adorable. Maybe he was wanting to practice his English on us. I don't know, but
yeah,
running over. Do you know what time it is? Like, he was just so cute.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was like super friendly. They didn't try to speak Bosnian or any other language. They're like, hey, you guys definitely look American.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was just. I think that memory's just always gonna stick in my mind for whatever reason. But anyways, moving on.
Yeah. So yeah, that kid was super cute, and like everyone we met was super friendly. From the random guy across the street, we had a waiter at one of the cafes that was telling us all about his experience in America. I think he lived in Virginia or something like
Philly,
that,
maybe?
or Philly or something in the Northeast,
Maryland.
Yeah. I think he worked with like crab cakes.
Oh
at the restaurant.
Yep.
But yeah, it's never like, oh yeah, I lived there. I lived in New York City or Los Angeles. Usually it's like, oh, I lived in like Maryland or I lived in Vermont. Yeah. It's always like the most random place in America that people who went to America for like only one time actually went.
And when they meet you, like they jump into like the most detailed questions. They just want to know everything about you. Like, why are you here? What, how much was your Airbnb? Like just different things like that. Like it's cool. Like, we're used to probably very surfacey type conversations, but to dive into some of these, deep conversations with the locals is really awesome. I think I enjoy that.
Yeah, and it's like, when I think Pastor Bobby back in Tirana told us, like, hey, there is no like personal, that's personal or that's secret. Don't talk about it. It's like, just talk about anything that you want to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much is your hotel? How much money do you make? What's your job?
Yeah.
Like, how's your family? Like, not surface level. Like, oh, they're good. Like, no, how are they? Are they healthy? Everyone getting along? Like, everyone immediately kind of jumps into like this family, like really getting to know you at a deep level. Yeah. So that is pretty cool.
That is cool.
And then there's, some other monuments besides the Bruce Lee. Another thing that we wanted to see was the Partisan Cemetery. And one of the really confusing things is, if you're watching YouTube videos, I mean, we get it. You have to trim it for a time, but people just magically appear at these places. So to get to the Partisan Cemetery, we enter into Google Maps, which works usually pretty good. Maybe not the past week, but usually pretty good. Where we enter in the location that we want to go. And it takes us there. For this, it wasn't like a proper, monument where it's right off of the main road, so we got lost a bit. We got to the end of this road, and we thought, okay, how do we actually get to this? Maybe it's up this hill. So we went up this hill that had a church on it and also had a clock tower, and it's one of those moments that, full disclosure, we would have made fun of other people for. We're like, oh, there's a peace tower, it's so beautiful. And then like we actually went to the real peace tower, like, oh no, that's much smaller and pales in comparison. So if that was on film, we would look very silly. But that wasn't the right way. It went up to a gate. So then we went back to the road, and along the way that we thought the cemetery was, and we saw another path with like where this billboard was. So like, okay, let's cut through this path. Mm-hmm. And there was like a house on the right and then another gate. So eventually we just went up to like the main road, turned left onto that, and then we saw this other little path area. Like, oh, maybe that's it. Because there's no signs. There's nothing to really guide you or point you into the right direction. But we just kept walking, and eventually this was the area that that we needed to go to, and it looked really, really cool. But then when we got there, there were some other people there, and I don't get like hang out just for fun at like a cemetery, right? So like if I was gonna go and take cute, super sexy Instagram pictures, it wouldn't be at a cemetery. That just seems really weird to me. But there's these two girls just laughing, having a good time, taking pictures of each other. Now I know that like the view looks really cool, but like you're still at a cemetery. Isn't that weird? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, granted, we did ask them to take a picture of us with the view in the background, but it was just like one photo real fast, not to linger there.
Not like a full photo shoot of how cute you look at a cemetery.
Yeah. Mind you, these girls, I appreciate them taking our photo, but she's like, okay, I got you. And she takes the phone and she's like kind of getting low and like doing all these angles. I'm like, no. I just need a straight on photo. So I didn't think they were the best, but hey, at least we have a remembrance of being at the cemetery with a really awesome view with some girls that were also at the cemetery hanging out doing a photo shoot. Yeah. So, anyways,
and we were just trying to take some pictures of like the monuments, and like they have this cool sundial, and they have like these like petal or puzzle shaped stone tombstones with like everyone like that would from the Yugoslavian army or partisan army that was killed during these Bosnian wars. But yeah, so we're walking around that general area, and then we're just trying to take our pictures. But yeah, between the girls like just sitting in some of the area, or like even when they were out of the shot, like they left their bag on one of the monuments. It's like we're just trying to take these pictures here. Like these girls are just hanging out like it's their own living room or something like that. And then they kind of went to the side, and we try to do some drone footage. And usually, okay, so the way the drone works is very simply is you have like this application, you plug your phone up to it, you turn on the drone itself, and then once the controller is turned on, then you connect the two, and then you can usually fly. But there's this little application that says usually you can fly, no problem. But if you're too close to like an airport or like a military base, you can't fly, right? No problem. But when I got all connected, I was like, oh, this is gonna be really cool. Like, let's fly the drone kind of into that sundial, because it's like the sundial, and then there's a couple levels down with a different tombstone, so it would look really cool from a drone perspective. But there was like a stadium that was too close to it, and we couldn't fly it. But we can see the stadium, and not like there's a lot of games going on anyways, but that's why it's like when someone comes up to us, like when we were in North Florida, they're like, oh, you can't fly here. I'm like, the drone won't fly if I can't fly here. I can't fly here. So, yeah. But normally it's not a problem, but we couldn't fly the drone at that point. But yeah, so that was our experience there. And so it's still pretty cool to walk around and see all of that. But yeah, it was funny. When we were at that little clock tower, we thought that was a big clock tower. But we eventually did get to the proper Peace Tower. And this is attached to I think it's a Catholic church that is still being renovated. And it's funny, as we're walking up to it, we can see all the basically the whole paint crew. It's like, it felt like you're almost at like a construction site, because everyone's walking by, they're covered in paint. And then when we did peek in, there was a priest, and he talked to us a little bit.
Yeah, he was walking in, and again, maybe it's, I don't know, again, he knows we're locals. And he's like, oh, you're visiting? And, he starts asking about us, how long we've been traveling. And then at the end of it, he's, just very happy that that there are tourists visiting again, and, giving us our best wishes. And then we headed into the actual Peace Tower.
The actual Peace Tower. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some place that you can go and properly buy a ticket. But we were just kind of wandering around. The door was open. And the elevator was right there, and we just went up. So this Peace Tower is pretty cool, because there's an elevator you can take that cuts out like 221 of the steps, and then you walk up another like 100 steps or so, and you take the elevator up, and then as you're going up the stairs, it is a clock tower, so there are bells that ring, and if you think about it, if you're relatively close to the tower, you can hear the bells ringing, and that's fine. But when you're actually in it, it's extremely loud.
Yeah, I don't think I put two and two together. This is a bell tower. There are bells. It rings every so often, and Usually it rings on the hour or, every half hour, but these bells ring every 15 minutes and they were massively loud.
Yeah, and there's not much distance. You're a couple of feet from the bells that are ringing as loud as they possibly can.
Yeah, the first time they rang, we were heading up, and then there's this group of guys that were heading down, and we're just we just froze, and then bust out laughing because we realized how loud they were. And anyways, so just beware if you are climbing any bell tower.
Yeah. So, I mean, this one is cool also because as you're going up, there's different pictures and descriptions. So it's also like you are going through a museum because there's this monument or this church or all these kind of different things that you can read about and learn about as you're climbing up. The bells look really cool if they're not ringing right next to your ear. And then when you get to the top, you have a really good view of the entire city of Mostar. So
yeah, cool. There was windows on every side of the tower, so you can see every part of the city, including the part with the old, not old, but the part that we thought was the original Peace Tower. And we saw the Partisan Cemetery from there. We could see the mountains in the distance, the snow-capped mountains. So yeah, it's definitely a great view for sure.
I'm sure you can even see the stadium that blocks you from flying the drone.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, definitely check out the Peace Tower. And then there's the area of Mostar that is also probably the most famous, right? Is the Stari Most. And around that is an old city, old bridge type of area that they call it. And there's a lot of markets with different souvenirs, with different restaurants, different shops. But, with everything going on, it's hard to tell what's open, what's closed, and it doesn't make a lot of sense on when things are going to be open.
Yeah, especially because, so like I said, the first day we were exploring was the Monday, so things seemed to be open and people were out and about, and we're like, oh, this is great, and then the next time we went out, things were closed, and we're like, wait, what? Is it because of the times? Is it because, we're going in an off season, it's not the summer? Who knows? But we always ended up seeming to go through the Old Town area at the wrong time. Or not at the wrong time, I'm sorry, but when we thought things would be open, they would be closed, and when we thought things were going to be closed, they were open. It just never made sense to us, because we like to collect patches, so we knew we wanted to go through the market to collect patches and just experience it, but yeah, we never went at the right time. But because we did walk through the market so many times, we made a stop at one of the ice cream gelato spots a few times, and the lady... It always ended up being the same lady there. And the first time we went, she was like, oh, do you want, the big size or the small size? And we're like, oh, we'll take the small size. And she's like, oh, you want the baby size? That's for children. You are a big man. Why do you want the small size? And, kind of playing around with us. But what was cool is just even the days that we weren't getting ice cream from her, she'd be like, hey guys, and I think that's one of the cool things about maybe just staying in cities for a week long, is you get to see some of the same people over and over, and you feel a little bit it's I don't know, it feels good to be recognized by the people and make connections. So I enjoyed kind of walking through that area over and over and over again. But yeah, that was cool.
Cool earrings.
Oh yeah, I got these. Wait, what? I got these. So yeah, these were one of the things that I got at the market as well. My earrings, for those of you listening and watching on YouTube, you can see them. But that was one of the times that the market was open. So we got earrings and our patch.
Yeah, so it still worked out, but yeah. And we talked to one of the ladies, and she's like, and we're like, when are you guys gonna open tomorrow or whatever? She's like, oh, open at 9 o'clock, and then I don't think she even opened until 11.
Yeah, noon or something. So, anyways.
Yeah, but with less people is good if you're filming and you're taking pictures, because we're able to get some really good pictures of the Stari Most, the old bridge, without anybody on it, or even just with 1 or 2 people on it, depending on when we took the pictures. And there's not a lot of people there, but there were some animals out there who really love their drone.
So yeah, when you took out the drone, so this city had way more cats than dogs from what we've seen, and these cats were so amused by the drone. Maybe it was the sound of it or something, but they were kind of, one in particular was just sitting there listening and watching it as it left, and then when you were bringing it back down and landed it, landed the drone, the cat was kind of like coming over and like creeping over the step, like kind of looking at it. And then like another cat friend comes by. It was cute. For all you cat lovers, you would enjoy that part of our video. But that was cool.
Probably it's like a bird, right? So
Yeah.
it's like hovering above them and it's making a sound similar to like a bird flapping its wings like really aggressively. So yeah, that's why the cat was probably so mesmerized by it. Even when it landed, like it thought about pouncing on it and trying to eat it from like it's a bird.
Yeah.
But we shoot it away. But it was pretty cute.
Yeah. One of the not so great things about, like, yes, it's good to go in off season when there's not a lot of people, but this bridge is known for people like these divers jumping off. So it's like we've seen, we didn't see it in person because one, the water was probably so cold.
Yeah.
So they might not even do it in the winter. But then also maybe just, it's off season, everything going on right now, like all of that. But I guess what happens is you have these divers, they're part of this divers club, and they kind of hang around the bridge and they collect money, and once they have enough money, then they put on a show and they dive into the water below. But like I said, we weren't able to witness that, which is okay. That's why we have YouTube. We can go watch that somewhere else. But what was really cool was one of the times we were walking across the bridge, and also be careful, this bridge is slippery. There was this lady kind of calling out from the tower on the top attached to the bridge saying, Bosnian coffee, Bosnian coffee. And we're like, that intrigued us because we knew we wanted to get Bosnian coffee.
Because, with things like clothes, we've heard, go to Cafe Alma. Like, you'll go there, you'll get the traditional Bosnian coffee experience. They'll explain it to you, sit down with you. And every time we went to go, they're rated on TripAdvisor. You see it on everyone's blogs. And every time we go there, it'd be closed. Like that and another one of the restaurants that was highly recommended closed every time. So it's like, dang, we're not going to get this experience and we're not going to see what the Bosnian coffee should be like. So when she was calling from above, like an angel, it was intriguing for us. That's why it was so cool.
Yeah, and so we're like, okay, let's head on up there and kind of check it out. So we go in and up the steps and we open the door and I don't know, I felt like it was somebody's living room for the moment we walked in, right? And so a lady comes over and, she offers us Bosnian coffee, and then there's a couple other people there. One older lady was sitting in the corner, I guess, with the best view, and so the lady that was making the coffee, she's like, no, move, let them sit there, kind of thing. So the older lady kind of stepped over to one of the other seats, and there was this old guy there, older gentleman there, kind of just chatting away and asking us some stuff and kind of sharing information about the city and the people there. And then when it was time to drink the coffee, he comes over, he's like, here, let me show you how, or whatever, and so he sits down and just with the most calm kind of pace and just is showing us kind of how they drink their coffee, how the coffee is made, and how this type of coffee is meant for people that go at a slow pace and have time to make the coffee. And even as I'm like speaking about it, I tend to talk really fast. I'm like recalling it, and it's just very chill and tranquil and very nirvana, as he said. So it was a really cool experience. One, to be able to talk to another local and hear their thoughts, but also to drink this Bosnian coffee in the traditional way while we were sitting right next to the Stari Most Bridge.
Yeah, so you're at a tower where you're looking over the Stari Most, you're looking over a lot of Mostar, and a lot of people drink caffeine to give them a little bit of a perk, a little bit of an energy. So it seems like kind of the opposite of what you would do, to like take it slow, to sit there and talk to people. But that's really how it should be, right? We talk about coffee culture, and we've seen it a lot in Albania and Montenegro that we went to as well. And everyone's just hanging out drinking coffee, but it's not just to get energy, it's to just a meeting place, to learn about people, to hear about their lives and all the details and all the personal things that, quote unquote, that Americans would say don't talk about, is when you talk about over coffee. So it was really cool to and to hear him and have him explain it to us, and just how like slow, and it really is mesmerizing, right? Because you make the coffee and then you stir it up, which is like, you're not just drinking it right away. You put your sugar cube into your cup, and then after you're stirring it for a little while, then you pour in the coffee that you stirred up, and then there's also the like rahat lokum, which other people might refer to as Turkish delight, but they have their own version, and you can eat that to add additional sugar to it. But like, it's this whole process that we're able to film and experience, and I'm really happy that we did, because I was really bummed every time we go by this cafe alma and we couldn't get this true experience. But this was like 10 times better.
Yeah, it was, and it felt magical too. Like, it was during golden hour, which as a photographer, like, that is my favorite time of day. And so the sun is beaming through the windows, and it's hitting these copper metals like at just the right light, and the steam is coming up at just the right, like, it literally was mesmerizing, especially when I was like editing the video and like slowing it down. I'm just like, if I could relive a moment, it probably, besides our wedding day, of course, I would relive that moment so far from our travels for sure. So,
it was awesome, and just like the timing of it, we're just walking by, there's no one else, and we walked over that bridge, I don't know how many times, a lot of times, and that was the only time she was calling out for people to like come up. So it was just like the perfect experience at the perfect time. Yeah. We did walk over it again, and this bridge is very slippery, which is what they don't tell you. And then one of the locals, I think he told us, right? The guy or the woman, but there's like 93 steps to memorialize, the year 1993 when that bridge is completely destroyed, and it's been since rebuilt, obviously. But in addition to it serving a good memory, it really helps because that bridge is super slippery, and you have to be very intentional when you're walking across. So as we're walking across the bridge, the one time though, I look up and I see the lady. She doesn't have the window open. She's not calling for people to come up and drink Partisan coffee. She just waves, and I go up and I wave, and I completely lose track of what I'm doing, and almost completely slip and fall. And I made direct eye contact with this lady, and so we know each other. We've had coffee together, and I'm here like an idiot, almost like completely falling on my butt, waving up to this lady.
Yeah.
But
no, it was cool. And while we were up there, you not falling is not cool. But I meant to say was the experience was cool. And while we were up there, they mentioned, this is kind of where the divers, come and prep and tell each other what to do beforehand, before diving into the water or whatever. So I think there was another actual room attached to that area for the divers club, but they, I think, would just kind of go up there and have coffee or whatever. So yeah, it was definitely a really cool experience, and I think that was towards the end of our trip too, and it was just a good way to kind of like wrap that up for sure.
Yeah, so we really had a good time in Mostar. But that's not the only place that we visited in that general area. We also visited Blagaj.
Yeah.
Which is really famous for an Instagram photo spot. I think you said you didn't really know about it, but I think I watched it from some other YouTubers who like want to go and see this famous Instagram spot. And full disclosure, I was like, I don't really get it. Like, okay, it's a house against a mountain. It does look cool, but like, you really just go in there to see that? Because I didn't see anyone besides one guy when we were doing research, very recently, that actually toured the house. Like, I didn't see anything else there. It was just like, oh, it's a house against a mountain. Like, you see that a bunch.
Well, I can kind of understand it. Like, once we did get to that spot where you take that Instagram famous photo, like the way the white building contrasts against the mountain and the water, and then you have the reflection of the house in the water, like it does look really cool. But that's not the only part of that area that is very photographable and beautiful, because that base of the mountain is where the Buna River begins. So like that's where it springs from, and then like it kind of does a little dip and it creates a little bit of a waterfall. So there's this rushing water next to these restaurants with the house in the back and the cave in the background. So like if you take a few steps kind of further out, you get this bigger, beautiful picture of this whole space. So when we decided to visit Blagaj, we took that kind of day trip. It's about 30 minutes from Mostar. We decided, okay, we don't want to just take that one picture there, but we want to experience all of that and then also see what else the city has to offer.
Yeah, so when we did go there, yeah, so we went to the the Instagram spot, and when it's not and it's not in winter, so if you're gonna go in like the caves of Belize or any of these other kind of caves, like you can't go in winter because the water rises too high and it's not safe. So there was nobody. I guess when you get there for like €1 or €2 each, they'll take you into the cave to kind of see the source of it, and it does look very peaceful. But that wasn't happening. Water didn't look like ridiculously high, but that's what they said. So they take a cable, and the cable from one area where the little boat. I mean, it's like a canoe. It's like this really small thing, but they'll kind of go along the cable and kind of go against the current to take you into the cave where the Buna River starts. The cable wasn't up. There's no boat like that. That wasn't happening. But you can still see into the cave, and it doesn't do it. And it's like, how is there a waterfall? But like when you're there in real life, you can see the water is like rushing pretty good, and it's like super clear whether you're on the side with the boat or you're on the other side with the Dervish house. So if you're gonna go visit that, you pay. I don't remember how much.
I think it was €5.
I think it's something like €5 a person, and you get access to the Dervish house. And the guy at the gates, the ticket taker or whatever, said, "Oh, there'll be someone in there to explain things to you and to kind of explore with you and show you around." I think we saw the lady, but then she like dipped out into another side room, so we didn't get like the proper tour that we were supposed to get. But it was still okay because like there was only a couple other people there, so we both basically had the Dervish house to ourselves. Now, to be respectful, because it's a monastery, I think it's a version of Islam, so when you're going in, you have to, women have to cover up their hair, and you're supposed to wear like long pants or a skirt, but they do provide additional scarves and skirts at the entrance.
Yeah, and it's still being used today too, so that's also another reason for sure.
Yeah, so it's still being used. So if you go at certain times, you'll see people praying. As you're walking through. So yeah, you take off your shoes. Everybody, women need to wrap their hair, and then everyone needs to wear like long pants, or women could wear like a long skirt. Well, what did you do when you went there? Did you use the skirt that they had, or you just used?
No, I just had my leggings on, and I brought my skirt just in case, but it didn't seem like I needed to. So.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you wrapped your hair and things like that, and we took off our shoes there, which is a good practice. Getting dirt and all this kind of stuff into your house. So we walked around, and it was interesting because they have the signs to tell you about who founded like this sect of the religion, and it's interesting in Islam where the very important people will have like these above ground tombs. So it's like these tombs like in a house, or these tombs outside of a mosque where the person who invented, or the person who invented either the sect of the religion or was a very famous, popular person, is still buried to this day. It's tied to the thing that they're most known for. So we saw that. They have this one view where the Quran is open, and it's like this huge version of it, and it's looking right out at the source of the river. Yeah, and then there's also like a saying like from everything. From water comes everything, so everything kind of ties in spiritually to the source of the river. So to have like a religious building there, tied in with the water and the nature and the source of the river is a pretty cool place.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense as to that placement for sure.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. So don't just go there and go to the Instagram spot. Also make sure you tour the Dervish house. And then you could also eat there as well. There's a couple restaurant options.
Yeah, there's a couple restaurant options. And another good reason as to us going to places in off seasons is the one restaurant that has a better view of the waterfall with the house in the background and the cave. Has these seats like literally almost kind of hovering the waterfall, and I would imagine during busy seasons it's packed with people, but because it wasn't, we kind of went in there. We were looking at the menu to see if we wanted to eat there, but while we were doing that, I also, you know, was able to take some pictures right in that spot with like the water kind of super close to me, and so that was.
Because you had to be bending over people sitting there eating to take those pictures.
Yeah, if there were people there, but there weren't, so I was very thankful for that, because then we got to get some of those really cool shots as well.
Yeah. So yeah, not just the Instagram spot, which is cool. Not just the Dervish house. Not just some. There's mixed reviews. The restaurant that we went to was really awesome. We enjoyed that. But you also see the waterfall. But in addition to all that, there's also a fort. We don't have a car. We don't have like an international driver's license or anything like that. So we either have to walk places or take a bus. So we took a bus to the general area that was close to the Dervish house. But then to get to the fort, it was an additional walk. And it was, so you walk what?
I think, so yeah, it was like, I want to say like maybe 40-minute walk from the Dervish house to the base of the mountain where the fort was.
And that's where like the proper parking lot is. We did see two women like drive up there and park. So there's a bit of a walk, but you could also drive up the mountain to get to that spot.
Mm-hmm. And then I think it was about a 20-minute hike from the base of the mountain up to the top to get into the fort. And we didn't know what we were expecting. Like, you know, we haven't seen too many people visit this, so we didn't know what to expect. And so I didn't think we were going to do a lot of walking that day, so I just wore my little slip-ons. And so they're not the proper hiking shoes, but they managed. They did a really good job. So yeah.
Yeah, and so there are. So you basically go up in like a zigzag formation.
Yeah, we didn't actually like hike. You know, there was a little bit of a path. So.
Yeah, but on the part actually up the mountain, you know, there are a bunch of stones and stuff like that. So it's not like a smooth path or anything like that, but it is you know, blazed out for you to go there. Or you can go straight up on like just a path of rocks. But that looked extremely dangerous. If you were to slip, you'd be basically donezo. So we didn't want to do that. But we did eventually get to the top. And this is cool because there wasn't, you know, a ticket taker. There was no entrance. There was no gate. If you're brave enough to hike that 50 minutes from the Dervish house or drive and then go up the mountain by yourself, the reward you get, as you said, is being able to get in for free, which is pretty cool because there was those other two women who were there, but they basically just went to one section of the fort and camped out. And
yeah, I think they packed some food and they were watching the sunset. So, I mean, hey, if I lived in that area, I'd probably go hang out there for the sunset too.
Yeah. So this fort was cool because, yeah, you get a great view of the entire city of Blagaj. So not just like the Dervish house area, but all the city area too. So you can see all of that. And, you know, I think it was a pretty cool setup. So like there's some like openings where you can see other things as well. But yeah, it's a really cool place to walk around. Not as huge as everything else that we've seen, but it was cool because it was more like, hey, this isn't like a national attraction. There's no signs. There's no information. But after being up there for a few minutes, we did get joined by some other guys who were really awesome and told us a lot of cool stories. And I think they're local tour guides. They work for, I think Husrev-beg Tours is the name of their group. They have like a Facebook page and Instagram, I think, as well. And they told us all about Herzeg and how it basically ties to it being like mild weather and the Mediterranean environment, and about the proper name of the fort and just all the history. We have all of that audio in our YouTube video on Blagaj, so definitely, you know, check that out. But it's just one of those things, again, like the locals are like so like proud of their city and their country, and it's not like to be like, hey, we're better than you, or like to separate or be a divider or anything like that. It's just they're truly proud, and if someone else is there visiting them, it's like such a great honor, right? So a lot of Americans are like, oh, you know, don't show up to my house or anything like that uninvited, or, you know, don't come to my country or whatever. But like they're like, we're happy you're in our country and we want to tell you about it and why we're so proud of it. So we've just been very fortunate to have these experiences where people share, you know, the history and the culture, and we've learned so much just from the locals we've been able to meet. But yeah, they were really nice, and yeah, so we explored a little bit, learned some about it, and then we took the path back down. We saw another stray dog who was trying to follow us as well, and then he actually did follow us back a little bit, and then he found some other dogs, and he went off the trail. He took care of his own business, let's just say, and then we made it back. So a great time with Blagaj. A lot more to do than just see the one Instagram spot, even though that is pretty cool as well. From there, we went to a third city, and we stayed here much longer. The Blagaj trip was just a day trip, but this was a bus to, we took a bus to Sarajevo. And yeah, this had a completely different like vibes, and this was more of like a proper, I won't say like proper city, but it's more like, you know, a bigger city with more people, especially at the time, I guess, that we went to Mostar. It's like an older kind of city, so there wasn't a lot of people around. But this was like true, you know, city and everything like that.
Yeah, it's filled with restaurants and shops and especially the old part area, the Baščaršija market. That's kind of where we stayed near. And when we got there, I think we got there midday, so we dropped off our stuff and then went to go find lunch. And there was just a lot more people out and about, and it felt, you know, like a bigger city. I don't think we've felt a city like that since we were in Tirana, because Tirana is huge, and all the other places we visited so far are smaller towns. So yeah, it definitely vibes that. There's a different energy for sure. I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and it had to be big, and it had to have you know, all the infrastructure in place, because it did host you know, the Winter Olympics in 1984. So it is a large city, and it definitely has definitely a different feel. But yeah, as you're going around the Baščaršija, the old market, you know, it's very famous for like its copper art. It was like one area is just, hey, we do copper art, and I read that you could still see people doing it to this day. So we just walked around just to see if we could find anybody, and we did come across someone who actually did copper art still.
Yeah, as we were walking through that little kind of alley area, we heard some banging, and we're like following the sound of the banging noise. But we turned into a little shop, and there was this guy that we met who has been doing copper art, and he's been carrying out this copper art crafts through his family for 4 generations. He is the 4th generation, and kind of as we're looking at his art and he's sharing some of his history, you know, we noticed there was this newspaper article that kind of said, from war comes art. And so, I don't know, we kind of just, as we were, you know, seeing a lot of other stuff, just kind of kept that guy in the back of our mind, just to see how, like, you know, through his story, you know,
like everything that they went through, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just like, oh, I have a 4th generation, you know, business, everything's been fine. It's like they've been through like wars and like these awful tragedies, and they still didn't lose sight of art. So for some people, they'd be like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, that's what my parents did, or I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I don't have it in my heart to create, because it's not. Yeah, I mean, he's literally banging these things together and making it from scratch. I mean, everything from like bookmarks to plates, and everything had a big meaning. He even had like one gold plate that he said, "This is not for sale because it has my like an emblem to represent himself and his father and his grandfather." So there's just so much little detail into these things, and it's so amazing, like that you could tell, you know, the story of like, hey, this is the time of the Olympics, this is the time of the Bosnian Wars, this is the time of every single thing, and you know, these things last for a lifetime. So it was interesting to meet him and to hear his story too.
Yeah, and he had a son, and he told us that, you know, his son was learning too how to make the art. So yeah, you know, it's very important. I'm sure not just to his family, but to many of the families there that have learned that craft.
Yeah, and for the most part, the weather was good. We got to walk around Baščaršija and see the sable and the pigeons and all that kind of stuff.
Those crazy plump pigeons.
Yeah, the pigeons are always around because they're being fed. You can tell that they're eating a lot for sure.
Yeah.
So the weather was mostly good, but towards the end it did get very cold. It even started to snow. So that was pretty intense to be, you know, snowed on as we're out and about in Sarajevo. But we still did get to see a lot of things. So there's like a museum pass where you could see 5 museums for basically the price of one, which is a good deal. But the museums are only open from like 12 to, I don't know, it's like 11 to 1 or it's
That's
only.
what they said, but I don't even think they kept it to that because I think we tried to go to one of the museums at noon and they're like, oh, we're closing in 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay.
So we're able to see, I think, the Dervish house, which is how someone would have lived if they were, like a wealthy business person or something like that. And then we're able to go to the oldest like synagogue in the area that is not an active practicing one anymore, but it's a museum of like Jewish history in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we got to see 2 of them, but there's no way I don't think you can go through all 5. We went to the first museum like right when it opened. So, but it's still something that you could see. Another cool aspect of the city is like the area dedicated to Gazi Husrev-beg. So he was someone who had a lot of power, and he really wanted to contribute to the city. So there's a mosque dedicated to him. There's a library. There's a clock tower, and he was the sponsor of like the first and the oldest schools in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So there's a lot of history there. We went into more of the details. We showed that in our vlog, but it's pretty cool that there'd be like just one person who left such a lasting memory from like religion to education to all kinds of things around the city.
Yeah, and all his stuff was kind of in that Baščaršija market area, the older part of the city.
And then there's another area that's probably the most famous. There's a Latin Bridge area. That's where Gavrilo Princip, assassinated the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Those events, as a pinpoint to the start of World War I. There's obviously a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things that happen, but that's kind of the story that's told and the launching point, if you will. So there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of bridges that cross over that river. They're not huge. Some of them cars can go on, but mostly you can walk over them. But just a lot of history between the museums. And on one side of the Latin Bridge, we didn't get a chance to go into it because the hours are crazy, but they tell more of the story and have some of the artifacts related to Gavrilo Princip and Franz Ferdinand, and some more pictures and some more history there as well. Another major spot of the city is the meeting of cultures, and this is basically a line in the sand separating the new style buildings, or the newer style buildings, and then you turn around, do a 180, and you see like the older side, like the old town where the Baščaršija is, and all the old Ottoman style buildings. So that's pretty cool to see like the stark contrast between the older style and the new. There's a lot of different restaurants. There's a lot of options, but there's one restaurant we went to basically every day.
Yeah, Hans Calabara Han, I think, and it was in the old part of the city. And I think we popped in there because we needed something warm to eat on that snowy day. So we ended up getting some soups that day, but it was really good. And we're like, oh, we need to come back a different day to try some of the other stuff. And we did. I think we eat there almost every day. But their food was delicious, and this is not sponsored by them, but we went there I think every day and tried almost every single plate. Also, it was just delicious. And they had like an indoor area, they had an outdoor area.
Like lights up in like their little courtyard area.
Yeah.
Which even look cool at night.
Yeah, so one of the nights that we were walking by, we saw it at night, and we're like, oh, like we just kept being gravitated towards that spot. And the people that worked there were awesome. I think the first waiter we had was great, and then as the week went on, we had great waiters each time. And so it was good.
Yeah, so we enjoyed that, and it's cool how they bring it out. They bring out like a lot of warm bread, which we might have taken some of it back to the hotel. But yeah, warm soups, and great waiters who were super friendly. We went back like on the 3rd day, and we're like, oh, we hope we get the same waiter, but we got a different one, and he was even nicer than the first one. In addition to that, for lunches, we even went to this one pub, and this really felt like we were back in 2019 because Well, we originally wanted to go to a brewery museum, but then I read the reviews and they were not so best. But then I found like the top rated on TripAdvisor, kind of bar to go to. And you walk into this place, like, yeah, it's smoky, but like there's tons of people in there. It's like complete. You would think, yeah, you're back in 2018. None of this crazy stuff was going on. So we originally, when we walked in, there was 2 women who were sitting at the table by the entrance, and the bartender moved them to the back, and then he sat us there. And as he sat us there, we were only there for like a minute, and we're like, yeah, they wanted to move because it's freezing.
Right by the door.
You're right by the door, and all the cold air is coming in.
Yeah.
And then eventually he saw another table that was opened up, and he moved us further away from the door, closer to the kitchen and in the bar area. And as we look up, we see like them delivering all this food. Like there's like these mammoth burgers, like these big sausage. It's like basically like you're in like the Flintstones, like how big like the food portions were. And they're playing like some Spanish music.
Yeah.
So it was like almost like you're at like a bar in Miami, like really kind of low lights. It was like smoky. There's a bunch of people. There's even this one little spot where you can like sit and look over some of the rest of the restaurant. I think on the way to the bathroom, which was weird, but had a good view and more of a private seating area. And then we saw some more like copper items dedicated to, and this place is called Vučko, and it's basically what they repurposed the mascot from the Olympics, basically.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, with these like fox, this like red fox, and he was on this copper plate. It's holding like the Olympic flame or like something like that in one hand, and his current mascot or symbol for the bar. It's the same fox, but he's holding like a beer or something like that. So they changed out the beer for the Olympic symbol. But it's like a really cool like vibe, and it's like you could rarely get a like draft beers or anything like that, but here we were able to do that. And because you had the Carlsberg draft beer, which is like a lager.
Yeah, and as we walked in, they had a bunch of like kind of paintings in the little alley heading into the bar, and there's like a painting on there with the name of that beer, and it says the best beer in the world or something like that. And I'm like, whatever. And I ended up getting that beer, and it was really good. I'm not one to drink a lot of beer, but I liked it. It was good.
Yeah, another draft beer that they had that I got that was super awesome was they had a red IPA, which was from Bosnia and Herzegovina, so a nice local draft that had like a nice hoppy flavor. So that place was awesome.
Yeah, you said that was your favorite beer so far, right?
Yeah, because I like IPA, like a more flavorful one, and a lot of them are just like lagers or whatever, and I think draft tastes better than like in a bottle. So
I do agree with that. If it's draft, I would prefer a draft beer than a bottled or a canned beer. I can taste the difference when it comes to that.
Yeah. So that was a super cool spot to find, and had a great time there, and just great time overall in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, we learned so much about like history. We were introduced to the proper Bosnian coffee drinking experience, and we met some friendly locals who told us all about the city that we were in. And Bosnia and Herzegovina just has a whole lot, right? I mean, there's famous bridges, a lot of history. There's like castles. There's monuments to the good things and to the not so good things. So there's so much there, and we just appreciate you listening to this podcast. To give you longer episodes, we're trying to make a podcast per country, which will include 1, 2, or 3 different cities. And when those are ready, they'll be released on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple or whatever podcast provider you use. In the meantime, we will have our, either vlogs or short travel films each and every week on YouTube. So even if there's not a podcast, there will be a video. And we do have daily content on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. This is Witty Travels. What could possibly be next?